There is a sound that is louder than any scream, louder than any argument, louder than the most desperate plea for connection. It is the sound of a frantic heart suddenly going still. It is the deafening roar of absolute silence. For months, perhaps even years, you have been the loud one, not loud in volume, but loud in energy. You were the one initiating. You were the one analyzing. You were the one writing the long paragraphs of text, trying to explain your feelings, trying to bridge the gap, trying to make them understand. You were the engine of the relationship. You were the heartbeat. The avoidant partner got used to this noise. In fact, they relied on it. Even if they pushed it away, even if they called you too sensitive or too intense, your pursuit reassured them. Your chasing confirmed their value. It told them that they were a prize worth fighting for. It told them that no matter how much they withdrew, the avoidant has spent their entire life perfecting the art of detachment, the art of emotional suppression, the art of being fine on their own. They believe they are the fortress, indestructible, unshakable. But that is an illusion. The truth is much darker and much more profound. The avoidant is not strong. They are numb, and their false sense of superiority depends entirely on your reaction to their numbness. They need you to feel the pain that they cannot feel. They need you to carry the emotional load of two people. They need you to be the mirror that reflects a version of themselves that is lovable even when they are acting unlovable. So what happens when the mirror shatters? What happens when the empath, the healer, the fixer, looks at the avoidant and feels nothing? This is why a fed-up empath is infinitely more dangerous than an avoidant. The avoidant breaks your heart. They cause damage. They leave scars. But the fed-up empath, they dismantle the avoidant's entire reality. When an empath reaches this stage, they do not want revenge. Revenge implies that you still care. Revenge requires emotional investment. No. The fed-up empath brings something far worse to the table. They bring the void. They bring a mirror that no longer reflects potential, but reflects reality. The cold, hard, brutal reality of who the avoidant actually is, without the filter of your love to soften the edges. In this deep dive, we are going to deconstruct the neuroscience behind this shift. We are going to explore why your brain tolerated the crumbs for so long and the exact chemical reaction that occurs when your cortisol overrides your oxytocin. We are going to look at why your indifference is the one thing the avoidant cannot psychologically survive. You have spent a long time wondering why you weren't enough for them. By the end of this audio, you will understand why they were never enough for you. Before we discuss your departure, we must first understand your imprisonment. For a long time, you have likely asked yourself a cruel question. You look back at the neglect, the coldness, the days of silence, the emotional starvation, and you ask, why did I stay? Why did I tolerate it? Was I weak? Was I desperate? Let me absolve you of that shame right now. You were not weak. You were chemically hijacked. To understand the fed-up empath, we must understand the brain of the empath. You see, your brain is wired differently. Neuroscience tells us about mirror neurons. In everyone, these neurons allow us to empathize. But in you, they are hyperactive. They are on overdrive. When the avoidant withdrew, when they shut down, most people would see disinterest. But you didn't see the behavior. You felt their underlying wound. Your mirror neurons bypassed their cold exterior and connected directly to their hidden shame. You felt their fear of intimacy. You felt their inner child trembling behind the armor. You didn't leave because your brain was literally processing their pain as if it were your own. To walk away from them felt like abandoning a wounded part of yourself. You weren't staying for the abuse. You were staying for the potential. And this is where the second trap comes in, the most dangerous trap in psychology. It is called intermittent reinforcement. If the avoidant was cold 100% of the time, you would have left in a week. But they weren't, were they? There were moments, tiny, fleeting moments, where they opened up. A sudden text message at 2 a.m., a rare moment of vulnerability, a weekend where they acted like the partner you dreamed of. In those moments, your brain released a massive flood of dopamine. The relief was intoxicating. It was a high stronger than any drug. Think of a slot machine. If you pull the lever and never win, you stop playing. If you pull the lever and win every time, you get bored. But if you pull the lever and you win sometimes, unpredictably, randomly, you will pull that lever until you are bankrupt. The avoidant was your slot machine. They trained your nervous system to live in a state of starvation so that the smallest crumb of affection tasted like a feast. You weren't addicted to them. You were addicted to the relief from the anxiety that they caused. You became an emotional archaeologist. You spent your days digging through the rubble of their silence, looking for artifacts of the person they used to be or the person they promised to be. You told yourself, I can see who they really are. No one else understands them like I do. This is the tragedy of the empath. You have the ability to see the best in people. You have the vision to see the statue inside the block of marble. So you chipped away. You polished. You gave your energy, your patience, your sanity, trying to sculpt them into the person you knew they could be. You were betting on their potential, but you were betting with your own soul. You thought that if you just loved them hard enough, if you were just patient enough, if you just explained yourself clearly enough, they would finally feel safe enough to stay. You were trying to use logic and love to heal a disorder that is rooted in their survival instincts. You were trying to hug a cactus, believing that your warmth would make its spines fall off. But biology has a limit. The brain can only run on cortisol and adrenaline for so long before it initiates a shutdown protocol. The slot machine stops paying out. The mirror neurons stop finding the child and start seeing the monster. And that is where we are heading next. The moment the chemicals changed, the moment the give ran out. While you were drowning in analysis, while you were losing sleep, the avoidant was operating in a completely different reality. To understand why your departure destroys them, we must first understand the throne they sat on. In sociology, there is a concept called the principle of least interest. It states that in any relationship, the person who is least interested in continuing the relationship holds the most power. The avoidant lives by this rule. It is their religion. It is their shield. For the entire duration of your connection, they have held the cards. Why? Because they were willing to lose you, or at least they pretended to be. Every time you reached out, every time you asked for reassurance, every time you tried to fix things, you were inadvertently sending them a message. You were telling them, I am more invested in this than you are. To a healthy person, this looks like love. To an avoidant, this looks like insurance. It made them feel safe, not safe in a warm, fuzzy way, but safe in a superior way. They knew exactly where you were. You were right there chasing them. You were predictable. You were a constant source of validation that required zero effort to maintain. They didn't have to be vulnerable. They didn't have to show up. They didn't have to meet your needs because they knew deep down that you would accept whatever scraps they threw your way. They began to view your empathy as weakness. This is the cruelest part of the dynamic, the very traits that make you a beautiful human being. Your patience, your forgiveness, your ability to see the good in others. The avoidant interpreted these as a lack of self-respect. They thought, if I can treat them this poorly and they still stay, then they must really need me. I must be the prize. It fed their ego. It validated their belief that they are special, that they are broken but irresistible. It allowed them to maintain the illusion that they are independent and self-sufficient while they were secretly feeding off your emotional energy like a vampire. They looked down from their fortress walls and saw you camped outside weathering the storm, begging for entry. And they felt powerful. They felt in control. They convinced themselves that your love was unconditional. But they forgot one critical detail about unconditional love. Unconditional love does not mean unconditional tolerance. They mistook your endurance for an inability to leave. They thought you were staying because you couldn't live without them. They never considered the possibility that you were staying because you were choosing to endure the pain until you weren't. They got cocky. They got comfortable in the discomfort. They assumed the dynamic was set in stone. You the chaser, them the runner forever. They didn't realize that while you were chasing, you were also observing. You were collecting data. You were learning the pattern. And most importantly, they didn't realize that empathy is a finite resource. It is not a bottomless well, it is a battery. And while they were busy enjoying the power trip, while they were busy pushing you away to see if you'd come back, they were slowly, methodically draining that battery to zero. They thought they were playing a game of cat and mouse. They thought they were the cat. They are about to realize that they were never the hunter. They were just the bait. And the moment the mouse stops running, the game ends. There comes a day, usually a Tuesday or a quiet Sunday afternoon, when you look at them and you feel different. It isn't a gradual fading away. It is a snap, a sudden violent recalibration of your entire nervous system. For the longest time, your brain was fighting a chemical war. On one side, you had oxytocin, the bonding hormone, the love drug. Every time you thought about them, every time you remembered the good times, your brain flooded your system with oxytocin. It made you forgive. It made you rationalize. It made you stay. It acted as an anesthetic, numbing the pain of their neglect so you could keep trying. But on the other side, there was cortisol, the stress hormone. Every ignored text message released a drop of cortisol. Every cold shoulder, another drop. Every time you had to guess how they felt about you, another drop. Every night you spent wondering if you were too much, another drop. For months, perhaps years, the oxytocin was winning. Your love was stronger than your stress. Your hope was stronger than your pain. But biology is math, and eventually the math changes. There is a specific threshold in the human brain, a tipping point where the accumulation of cortisol becomes toxic. Your body stops viewing the stress as part of the relationship and starts viewing it as a threat to your survival. This is the neurochemical shift, and when this shift happens, it is irreversible. Suddenly, the oxytocin production shuts down completely. The love goggles are ripped off your face. The anesthetic wears off, and for the first time, you see them. You don't see the potential anymore. You don't see the wounded inner child that needs your help. You see a stranger. You see the selfishness. You see the immaturity. You see the cruelty. You see the manipulation, and it doesn't make you sad anymore. It makes you sick. This is the body's way of initiating a detox. It is an immune response. Your soul has finally identified the avoidant, not as a partner, but as a pathogen, a virus. And what does the body do to a virus? It expels it. It attacks it. It rejects it. This is why when an empath is done, they often feel a sudden wave of physical repulsion, the ick. You look at the person you used to worship, the person whose approval meant everything to you, and you wonder, who is this? Why did I try so hard for this? The pedestal crumbles. The magic evaporates. The intense craving to be near them is replaced by an intense need to be away from them, to wash them off your skin, to reclaim your own energy. The avoidant doesn't know this has happened yet. They are still operating on the old software. They still think your silence is a tactic. They still think you are pouting. They still think that if they snap their fingers, you will come running back eager for their attention. They do not realize that the chemistry has changed. They do not realize that the very thing that kept you attached to them, your immense capacity for feeling, has now been weaponized against them. Your empathy hasn't disappeared. It has just moved. It has moved from them back to you. You have started to empathize with yourself. You have started to feel sorry for the version of you that accepted so little for so long. And once an empath starts fighting for themselves, the war is already over. The avoidant just hasn't received the memo yet, but they will. Oh, they will. There is a common misconception about the end of a relationship. We are taught that the opposite of love is hate, but that is a lie. Hate is still a connection. Hate requires energy. Hate requires passion. Hate requires you to think about them, to rage at them, to craft arguments in your head, to replay the injustices over and over again. If you hate someone, they still matter. They still have real estate in your mind. The true opposite of love is indifference. And for an avoidant, indifference is death. When you were in the cycle, you probably fought, you probably cried, you probably sent those long, desperate text messages explaining your feelings, trying to get them to see your point of view. To the avoidant, those messages were annoying, but they were also reassuring. Your anger told them, I am still here. I am still trying. You still have the power to hurt me. But now that the chemical shift has occurred, you don't hate them. You don't love them. You just don't care. This is where the fed-up empath becomes a mirror of the void. You see, for the entire relationship, you are acting as a buffer for the avoidance emptiness. Avoidants often feel a deep inner hollowness, a lack of self-worth that they cover up with independence and arrogance. You were the one filling that hole. You were the one pouring love, validation, and attention into a bucket with no bottom. You were the one carrying the emotional intimacy for both of you. When you finally drop the rope, the avoidant is suddenly left alone with that hollowness. They reach out to you. Maybe with a breadcrumbs text, hey, how have you been? Thinking of you. In the past, you would have jumped. You would have analyzed every word. You would have responded instantly, hoping this was the breakthrough. But now you see the notification and you feel nothing. Maybe a mild irritation like a fly buzzing near your ear, but mostly nothing. You might reply hours later, I'm good, thanks. Or maybe you don't reply at all, not to play a game, not to teach them a lesson, but simply because you forgot. This is the danger of indifference. It is the danger of the void. When you stop projecting your beautiful, loving light onto them, they are forced to see themselves in the dark. They look into your eyes, expecting to see the reflection of a god, the version of themselves you created, but instead they see a stranger. They see a blank wall. This terrifies the avoidant more than any abandonment they have ever feared. Because deep down, their greatest fear isn't that you will leave them. Their greatest fear is that they are unremarkable, that they are forgettable. Your indifference confirms their worst nightmare that without your love magnifying them, they are small, they are ordinary, and they are alone. You have taken back the mirror. You are no longer reflecting their potential. You are reflecting their reality. And the reality is, a person who cannot love is not a mystery to be solved. They are a tragedy to be avoided. You have become the void they created, and now they have to live in it. There is a distinct kind of intimacy that only an empath can create. It is not just physical, it is psychic. It is the intimacy of being studied. For the duration of your relationship, you were not just loving the avoidant, you were decoding them. You paid attention when no one else did. You noticed the tiny flicker of fear in their eyes when they talked about their father. You noticed the way their voice changed when they felt insecure about their career. You noticed the subtle defensive mechanisms they used to hide their inadequacy. You gathered these clues. You pieced them together. You built a comprehensive map of their psyche. You know their triggers better than they do. You know their childhood wounds better than they do. You know exactly which armor they wear for which occasion. And for a long time, this knowledge made the avoidant feel safe. Why? Because you used this knowledge to protect them. You used your insight to soothe their anxieties before they even happened. You walked on eggshells so they wouldn't have to hear the cracking sound. You anticipated their needs. You curated an environment where their fragile ego could feel strong. You were the keeper of the vault. You held the keys to their deepest insecurities, and you guarded them with your life. You made a silent pact. I see your brokenness, and I will cover it with my love so the world doesn't see it. But now the pact is broken, and this creates a unique form of terror for the avoidant. When a fed-up empath walks away, they take the map with them. The avoidant realizes with a sinking feeling in their gut that there is someone walking around in the world who knows them, not the cool, mysterious, independent persona they present to their friends and colleagues. No, you know the real them. The scared child, the imposter, the person who runs away because they are terrified of failing. You have seen the wizard behind the curtain, and the danger is that you no longer look at that wizard with awe. You look at them with clarity. This is why they often try to vilify you after the breakup. They try to paint you as crazy, obsessed, or unstable. They need to discredit you because if you are sane and you walked away, then your judgment of them is valid. If the person who knew them best decided they weren't worth the effort, what does that say about them? It shatters their carefully constructed narrative. They can lie to new people. They can put on the mask for a new partner. They can restart the love bombing cycle with someone who doesn't know the script, but they can never lie to you again. You are the living proof of their failure to connect. You are a walking archive of their limitations. And when they look at you now, cold, distant, unbothered, they don't just see an ex. They see a witness who has stopped testifying in their defense. They realize that you saw all of them, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and you decided that the bad and the ugly were no longer worth the good. That is a rejection that cuts deeper than any insult. It is a rejection of their soul's currency. They are spiritually naked in front of you, and you are just looking away. To the outside world, the avoidant looks self-sufficient. They pride themselves on needing no one. They wear their independence like a badge of honor. But you know the truth. And now biology is about to teach them a lesson they cannot ignore. Throughout your relationship, you were not just a partner, you were a battery. You were a generator of a very specific resource called validation supply. Every time you chased them, you fed them. Every time you cried over them, you fed them. Every time you wrote them a letter trying to fix things, you fed them. Even your anger was food. It confirmed that they were significant. It confirmed that they had the power to affect you deeply. This supply acted as a buffer against their own deep-seated shame. It was a constant IV drip of ego boost that kept their self-esteem inflated. They walked through the world feeling taller, more desirable, more in demand simply because you were back there waiting for them. They didn't have to do anything to earn it. They just had to exist. And because the supply was so constant, they took it for granted. They stopped noticing it. It became like oxygen. You don't think about the air in the room until someone sucks it all out. The moment the fed-up empath decides to walk away, the oxygen disappears, and this creates a state of starvation. At first, the avoidant might feel relief. Finally, they think, no more pressure, no more demands. I can finally be alone. But then the silence stretches. Days turn into weeks and the withdrawal sets in. They start to feel a strange emptiness in their chest. They check their phone expecting the usual paragraph of text, but there is nothing. They post a thirst trap on social media, subconsciously hoping to bait you into reacting. But you don't view the story. You don't like the post. The IV drip has been ripped out. And suddenly that inflated self-esteem begins to deflate without your constant pursuit improving their value. They are left to generate their own value. And they realize with horror that they don't know how. They realize that their independence was a fraud. They weren't independent. They were just supported by an invisible structure that you built. This is where the silent panic begins. They won't show it to you. They won't post about it. but inside they are scrambling. They are experiencing a crash in dopamine that rivals a drug addict coming down. They start to question everything. Wait, why aren't they chasing me? Did I lose my touch? Am I not enough? The tables have turned completely. The person who cared the least is now the one obsessing. The person who needed space is now suffocating in the vacuum. You have not attacked them. You have not insulted them. You have simply stopped feeding the monster, and a monster that isn't fed eventually starves. They are left alone in a room with their own thoughts, and for the first time in a long time, there is no one there to tell them they are special. There is only the echo of their own avoidance in the silence. It is deafening. In the world of psychology, and particularly within the personality types of deep feelers like INFJs or highly sensitive people, there is a term that strikes fear into the hearts of those who understand it. It is called the door slam. If you are an empath who has reached your limit, you know exactly what this feels like. And if you are an avoidant who has pushed an empath too far, you are about to find out. The door slam is not an act of rage. It is not a dramatic exit where plates are thrown and insults are screamed. That is passion. That is hope. The door slam is quiet. It is the sound of a heavy steel vault closing and the tumblers locking into place forever. It happens when the empath has exhausted every single ounce of their emotional energy. They have tried everything. They have communicated until their throat was raw. They have forgiven the unforgivable. They have compromised their own boundaries 1,000 times. They have given the avoidant chance after chance after chance. But the empath operates on a hidden internal counter, a tally system. Every disappointment, every betrayal, every moment of neglect adds a mark to the tally. The avoidant doesn't see this counter. They think that because you forgave them yesterday, you will forgive them tomorrow. They think your capacity for suffering is infinite, but it isn't. One day the last mark is made. The counter hits 0 and the door slam engages. What happens next is a form of psychological dissociation. The empath disconnects their emotional supply line from the avoidant completely. It is a survival mechanism. To keep caring would be to die, so the brain chooses to stop caring instantly. You go from being the person who would die for them to being a stranger who looks at them with polite indifference. You don't block them out of spite. You block them because they no longer exist in your emotional world. They are like a file on a computer that has been deleted and the trash has been emptied. The avoidant will try to come back. They always do. They will sense the shift in energy. They will panic. They will finally send that text you waited years for. They will finally offer the apology you cried for. They will finally promise to change. But here is the terrifying part for the avoidant. It doesn't matter anymore. It's like trying to water a plant that has already turned to ash. You can pour the entire ocean on it, but it will not grow back. The empath has already grieved the relationship. You see, while the avoidant was busy playing games, the empath was grieving. They grieved the relationship while they were still in it. They cried the tears. They felt the loss. They processed the death of the dream, all while lying next to the avoidant in bed. So when the physical departure finally happens, the emotional work is already done. The avoidant is just starting their grief. The empath is finishing theirs. This is why the door slam is fatal. There is no negotiation. There is no closure talk needed. The closure was the silence. The avoidant stands outside the door knocking, pleading, bargaining, but there is no one on the other side. The house is empty. The lights are out. The empath has moved on. Not just physically, but spiritually. They have taken their love, their warmth, and their light, and they have given it to the one person who actually deserves it, themselves. For the entire duration of this dynamic, there has been a script, a set of rules, that both of you subconsciously agreed to play by. Rule number 1, they run. Rule number 2, you chase. It was a perfect ecosystem. The runner needs a chaser to validate their speed. The runner needs a chaser to feel desired without having to be intimate. Your pursuit was the fuel for their engine. But physics dictates that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And when the empath finally stops, the momentum shifts violently. This is the role reversal, and it is the most disorienting experience an avoidant will ever go through. Suddenly, the hunter becomes the haunted. You see, avoidants are not actually independent. They are terrified of dependency. Those are two very different things. They are terrified of needing someone because they believe that needing someone leads to pain, so they keep you at arm's length to prove to themselves that they don't need you. But the irony is they did need you. They needed you to be there at arm's length as a safety net. They needed to know you were waiting in the wings. Now that you are gone, the safety net is gone, and they are free falling. And this triggers their deepest, most primal wound, the abandonment wound. For years, you were the one feeling abandoned. You were the one feeling rejected. You carried that heavy load for both of you. You felt it every Friday night they blew you off. You felt it every time they prioritized their friends over you, but now you have put the load down, and gravity does the rest. The weight of that abandonment doesn't just disappear, it transfers, it slides off your shoulders and lands squarely on theirs. Now they are the ones checking their phone every 5 minutes to see if you've come back online. Now they are the ones stalking your social media, looking for clues of your life, analyzing your playlists, wondering who you are with. Now they are the ones feeling the crushing weight of silence in an empty room. They are experiencing the phantom limb of your love. They reach out for the warmth that used to be there and grab only cold air. And the difference in how you both experience this pain is crucial. When an empath leaves, they leave with integrity. You know you did everything. You know you turned over every stone. You know you loved them with a purity that is rare in this world.